Hello and welcome to the TechRadar phone show, your #1 source for all things mobile. Is the HTC One M8's camera powerful enough? In today's show, we're busting it wide open and taking an in-depth look at why HTC's still pushing ultrapixels in a megapixel world. Keeping in line with the photography theme, we've also got some top tips for you budding smartphone shutterbugs, but first here's a look at what's been happening in the mobile world this week. The heavily rumoured 5-inch Plus iPhone 6 is said to be facing production delays, making a 2014 release unlikely. Reuters was told by a source that the smaller 4.7-inch model will go into production later this month, but problems with in-cell technology needed for the larger screen size means that those hoping for an iPhablet may have to wait until 2015. Things are looking good for the Samsung Galaxy S5 Mini after Sam Mobile unearthed info pointing to some rather decent specs. According to so-called inside sources, the S5 Mini will rock up sporting a 4.5-inch 720p screen, quad-core Snapdragon 400, a gig and a half of RAM, and most importantly, will offer the same water resistance as its larger brethren. And finally, Huawei might have its sights on the HTC One M8. New images supposedly showing off the Ascend P7 have cropped up online and show off a rather sleek-looking all-metal rear case and what could be a fingerprint scanner. Previous rumours have suggested the P7 will arrive with a fair bit of power too, including a 5-inch Full HD display, quad-core CPU and 2 gigs of RAM. Now it's time to throw things over to Gareth and John, who are here today to put HTC's ultrapixels under the lens.
I think it's really good. I think it's a really strong
The gaming
show.
spotlight.
Yeah, I really think it's a really good show, and I think it deserves.
It's underrated.
Yeah, exactly. I think those guys are really, they really know their stuff. I really like the way they put this studio together. I just want to see more of it.
They've got a great chemistry.
Yeah, really great, and they're both really knowledgeable, good guys, and I really hope to see more of those shows.
So the HTC One M8, we've fully reviewed it. We really like it, but the big problem that everyone seems to be raising is the camera. 4 megapixels, 2 ultrapixels, however you want to shake it. It's not on paper looking as good as a Galaxy S5 of 16 megapixels, Z2 20.7, Lumia 1020 41 megapixels. Is that a big problem? You know, has HTC put its foot in it really?
I don't think that it's really a big problem. You know, people are saying that this is the major issue with the phone. I think it's more the fact that there's actually very little to find flaw with, really. I'd say probably HTC could have done better with upgrading last year's technology, but I do think it's impressive to stick with an idea. You know, ultrapixels came out last year, and so 2 ultrapixels is the way of talking about it. But really, what that means is 4 megapixels, but really big pixels, so you can get lots of light in. Low light is really good. The speed is really quick. All these things are really important, and HTC has stayed with that. I think it probably could have done better at upgrading the technology a little bit. It definitely will next year, but to say that it's a problem camera is really overstating things a lot, because what you do get is really quick snaps. You get really good processing. So the Duo camera is a really great innovation. I think it's some good hardware added in, and the only way to really make that work right now is to stick with 4 megapixels. So you've got less information going down that image pipe, getting to the chip, processing through. So what's more important is having a phone in your pocket that can take a picture instantly and not missing that moment. And that's what HTC's tried to stay with. If you do blow the pictures up, if you zoom in, you will see noise. It does get a bit muddy, and to some people that is a problem. It does definitely need to be something that you're comfortable with. But cameras on the phones are the last subjective thing really left on devices. Processor speed, screens, they're all so good that you can't really start criticising, but cameras is the place where you can still say, I like this, this is what I want. And I don't really think it's a problem.
But doesn't the Galaxy S5, for example, take better general day-to-day pictures? If you just pull the 2 phones out your pocket, yes, the HTC might take it quicker, but won't the Galaxy S5 actually give you a better picture? Yeah,
I definitely think it would. I think you'll probably find that generally, as you're taking shots day-to-day, you'd find that you'd probably get some better ones you'd be happy to show to friends and that kind of thing on a larger screen on the Galaxy S5. On the actual screen itself here, none of the photos come out looking bad. They look really, really impressive. They look rich. You add the U-focus thing in, they look really quite good. But HTC says it's going for the 80-90% of people that take photos, put them on their phone, maybe upload them to Facebook, and it is still adequate for that. I don't think that we should laud HTC for taking the idea to have 4 megapixels, because it definitely does need more for people just to feel satisfied with it. But I don't think it's really an inherent problem.
It's also trying to sell it more on its design, possibly, than the camera capability. Something like the Lumia 1020 obviously sells itself almost purely on the camera experience, whereas the HTC One, their focus is more design, that premium look, that premium feel, that more complete package, possibly, than than the rivals, and it is a better looking phone, a better feeling phone than the Samsung and the Sony out there.
Yeah.
And yes, while people are getting caught up with the camera issue, it's certainly not the worst camera we've seen on a high-end smartphone, and the overall package is still excellent.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say you've got this kind of split down the middle now, and the likes of HTC and Apple live in the simple camera that takes pictures quickly in a very easy-to-do manner, and you get the ones that you want, and that's it. You take more pictures of the things you really want to. The likes of Sony, Samsung go a little bit more high-end. Nokia's even further up there. And you're basically buying, especially with the Lumia 1020, you're buying a great camera with a phone stuck on it. There's no doubt about that. If you wanted a better phone, there are slimmer, more powerful devices out there. The S5 and the Z2, I'm still surprised about Sony and the camera sensor. I'm still not getting stunning pictures from what should be a really, really great package, because the G lens and the Bion sensor and the Exmor RS, all these things are really great headline features for Sony in the camera world, and yet suddenly, when you're taking all these test shots with the Z1 and the Z1 Compact, still getting noise, still getting kind of some oddly, understated shots that you think should be really impressive. And so just because you put megapixels in there doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be great. I do think that HTC, going back to that again, definitely needs more in there. And I think going forward, 2015's version is definitely going to have more in, otherwise it's a big step back. And I think HTC is aware of that. Apple is probably going to stick around 8 megapixels this year. So I think it's a lot to do with education as well. People need to realise that the megapixel war is still on, and people still think that more is better. And especially when other camera phones like the Galaxy S5 do take better shots, it's understandable criticism of the HTC One M8, but I think it's a design compromise, as you said, that's worth making. Gaming Spotlight, really like it, really good show, really strong.
It's really good host.
Great chemistry.
It's not like HTC can't put a decent camera in a phone. Look at the mid-range Desire 816, and it's got a 13 megapixel camera at a reasonably good price tag. So it's obviously not a price issue that HTC is struggling with here. So why have they gone down the Ultrapixel route with the M8?
I think the key word there, as you said, that they're putting a decent camera on. I mean, just because it's got 13 megapixels doesn't make it a decent camera. Going back again to that point about image processing and that kind of stuff. Fewer megapixels does make it easier. These phones should be able to handle more, which is why I keep saying it should be a higher megapixel camera. But if that preserves the ultra-pixel quality, that's more important. HTC, I'd imagine with the Desire 816 or the 816 or the 816, however you want to call it, give it a better name. But anyway, they probably just bought an off-the-shelf device there for the camera sensor, something that's made by another manufacturer, and just plugged it in to make it easier and cheaper to manufacture. Developing something like the ultra-pixel sensor does cost a lot of R&D, a lot of time, a lot of money. So I think that it's important to realise that just because it's got more megapixels doesn't make it automatically a better camera. But the thing is, consumers see that. They see more megapixels, and when you're in the smartphone world, and there's so many different sort of areas and minutiae of the spec sheet that you're thinking, what's right for me? What do I want to get the best out of my lifestyle? You don't really know, so you go for the best. It's like you buy a laptop, and if you're not really sure what's happening, you go for an Intel processor maybe, and loads of RAM, and that'll probably make it a better device. Same happens with phones, and I think that there's, it's HTC's and Apple's and everyone's job to educate the consumer and say, look, more megapixels doesn't make it a better device and a better camera. You'll get a sharper image, but you'll probably lose light, you'll lose, different kinds of areas within the image and make it noisier and muddier in certain ways. And if you haven't got the whole package, the image processing, the sensor, the right processor underneath, then it doesn't matter how many megapixels.
Plus, it won't be as fast because obviously the ultra-pixel camera is made with all of HTC's back end in mind, whereas the off-the-shelf version, they have to try and make their system work with something which isn't designed specifically for them.
I mean, shutter speed is huge. I mean, people seem to forget that being able to take a picture really quickly and in focus. I mean, that's what the Galaxy S5, I think, as well is going to have in its pocket in terms of being the better camera. Is it can probably take pictures as fast as the HTC One M8, but take them at a higher res. Playing with that phone, the autofocus was lightning quick. You're talking fractions of a second, and you've got a really clear in-focus picture that if the lighting's good, it probably will look really nice. So I think that's the kind of thing that people need to realise. All the conditions together are more important than just saying, oh, it's got loads of megapixels and that means I'm going to get a better picture, because it's just not true. You don't, the megapixel myth is something HTC talks about in its marketing, but it's an absolute fact, and it doesn't really communicate that well enough. And then when the likes of Sony and Samsung come in with high-end devices with more megapixels that take arguably better photos, it is a criticism that's fair. I think the U-focus element is the main sort of game changer for them really with this. I do think that, you know, the photos you get afterwards, like I've been showing the phone to a lot of people and they're saying what's different, what's new, and obviously once you get past the design, it's really the camera and the boom sound and things like that. And when I'm showing people the U-focus thing, that is actually really, really impressing them. They go, that's actually really good. That's, you know, like some family members are like, oh, can you print that out? And you obviously, maybe not if you don't want to print that out that big, but it's that element of like, oh, that actually is quite impressive. That's quite cool. I could actually use that. And I think what the key difference here is that people don't realise that there's hardware which makes it quicker. You know, when you've got something like the Galaxy S5 or the LG G Pro 2, what that does is that takes a load of pictures in a row and then processes them and then works out the depth, and then afterwards you can move the focus around afterwards. With the Galaxy S5, like you said, you have to set the mode up. You have to then go into it afterwards, and you've got sort of foreground and background in the middle. You know, with the HTC, at least you can choose your focus. It's done very, very quickly. And again, that's a benefit of the Ultrapixel camera, because you don't have to do all this separate picture taking and processing. I think it's a great feature, and I think it should be made more of. I don't think, it's not necessary, but we're getting to that point now where there's so many things that are done well, you've got to start finding reasons to sell a phone. So I think the background defocus is cool. And, you know, you can imagine Apple coming out later in the year and doing it even better than everybody else, simply because, you know, they make it simpler and make it easier to do. But whether it's a necessary feature, I don't think so, but I think it's good to see people trying different things. So 4 megapixels, 2 ultrapixels. Hope that clears up some of the confusion over whether the camera is any good in the HTC One M8.
And taking pictures with your smartphone can be tricky, so here's TechRadar's essential guide for getting the best photos from your phone.
You want total control over how your pictures look, meaning you'll want something that lets you control focus and exposure. Some phones will let you do this by default, such as the Nokia Lumia 1020, but if not, there are plenty of apps out there that will give you the option. Two worth checking out are Pro Camera 7 or Camera Plus for iPhone. This might seem like a no-brainer, but if you dig deep, you'll be pleasantly surprised at what your smartphone can do. Don't be afraid to tinker with your settings and play around with features like panorama and HDR mode. Your phone has plenty of space for test shots, and this way you'll soon know your way around your software like it's second nature. Start with the rule of thirds. Imagine a grid of lines on your smartphone's display, dividing it into thirds horizontally and vertically. Most smartphones will actually come with an option to display such a grid. With the grid up, put your subjects along the line or where the lines meet. It'll make photos much more interesting than if they're smack dab in the middle of the frame. Once you get into this habit, you'll have a better sense of a photo's balance, and after that, you can start breaking the rule and see what works and what doesn't. Generally, shooting indoors with artificial light or outside with overcast skies or at midday is flat and dull. Instead, look for light with some kind of directional colour, like around sunrise and sunset. Alternatively, window light is great because it has direction and it's often soft and slightly diffuse, so it's not harsh on your subject. Taking pictures of pretty scenes is fine, but if you really want your picture to tell a story, find a good moment. Keep your eyes out for movement. It might simply be someone walking by, in which case wait until the shape of the person balances the photo before snapping. Always keep composition in mind. Don't just stand around. Line up and snap one photo, then move along. Maybe a better shot will come along in a minute or 5 minutes. Or maybe you get a better photo by standing closer or further away from your subject, or perhaps the photo will look better from a lower angle or a higher one. And finally, don't stop shooting. If you only take photos once in a blue moon, it's going to be a very long time before you're the Ansel Adams of the smartphone world. Try shooting a little each day, even if you're lacking inspiration, and mix it up. If you can show off pictures that impress your friends and family, you're doing something right.
So that's it for another phone show. Be sure to catch Gaming Spotlight next week.
Which is better than the phone show.
Much better.
Yeah.
In fact, I prefer it.
Yeah, exactly. So like and subscribe to see more information about that. You'll get some of the stuff of that phone show, but really it's about the Gaming Spotlight. Just to reiterate, Gaming Spotlight, really good.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Top show.